So back in 2022, the financial tech company Klarna had roughly 7,000 employees.
Right, a massive workforce.
Exactly. Fast forward to 2025, and they systematically deployed AI across their customer service, marketing, and, financial processing divisions.
And we know how that went.
Yeah, their headcount absolutely plummeted to under 4,000. I mean, almost half of their entire workforce was just eliminated.
Wow.
And how did the market react to this massive reduction in human capital? Investors rewarded Klarna with a $20 billion IPO.
Which is just staggering.
Welcome to the deep dive, everyone. Today we are looking at a brutal economic reality you might already be feeling in your own office or your own industry right now.
Yeah, welcome.
Yeah.
The Klarna precedent perfectly encapsulates this divergence we are seeing across the board in early 2026.
It's that K-shaped recovery we keep hearing about, right?
Exactly. We are operating inside what macroeconomists refer to as a K-shaped reality. On the upward arm of the K, companies integrating AI are experiencing an average 11.5% productivity gain.
And that's according to Morgan Stanley data, right?
Correct. So corporate profits and balance sheets are just thriving. But the downward arm of the K is where the actual humans live.
Yes.
Those financial gains are being directly fueled by sweeping structural workforce reductions.
The stock market is essentially throwing a massive party while the family living next door to you is, staring at a layoff notice.
It's stark contrast.
And that is why we are unpacking a highly confidential strategic white paper today. It's from EON Reality and EON AI Ventures, and it's titled The Sovereign Human Initiative.
Yeah, and the mission of this document is to outline a pretty radical systemic framework.
Right.
It's all about transitioning millions of displaced workers into the new AI-driven economy before the bottom completely falls out of the middle class.
Because it attempts to solve a macroeconomic crisis by basically addressing the microeconomic reality of you, the individual worker.
Precisely. The transition mechanisms we've relied on for the past century are fundamentally breaking under the speed of algorithmic deployment today.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to evaluate if EON's solution actually holds water, we first have to look at the specific demographic taking the hit here.
Which is completely different from what people expect.
Right. Traditionally, when we talk about automation, the mind instantly jumps to the factory floor. We picture, robotic arms welding chassis on an assembly line.
But diving into this white paper, it's clear the crosshairs have moved.
Yeah, AI is bypassing the assembly line entirely and going straight for the corner office.
It really is. The white paper pivots away from theoretical models and relies heavily on the Anthropic Economic Index, and this is a crucial methodological shift.
How so?
Well, for years, labor economists looked at what AI could theoretically do, in a lab setting. But the Anthropic Index measures what AI is actually executing in live professional environments right now. And when you map real-world AI task coverage against occupational databases, the hierarchy of vulnerability is completely turned upside down.
Yeah, the exposure rates are just terrifying if you hold one of these degrees. I mean, we are looking at computer programmers with 74.5% of their daily tasks covered by AI.
It's massive.
And customer service representatives are sitting at 70.1%. Medical record specialists are at 66.7%.
Right. And we are not talking about isolated gig workers here.
No, these are highly educated, deeply embedded professionals.
And that demographic shift changes the entire calculus of systemic economic risk. Workers in these highly exposed cognitive roles are statistically much higher earners.
Right. They have accumulated significant educational credentials. They usually hold graduate degrees.
Exactly. They have built their entire financial infrastructure around the assumption of uninterrupted, high-level income.
Which means their fixed costs are massive. I mean, if you are listening and you're in one of these roles, you might be carrying a $5,000 a month prime mortgage.
Plus managing university tuition for your kids.
Exactly. And contributing to the collective $1.7 trillion in outstanding student loan debt. So if we see a scenario where highly compensated professionals lose their income simultaneously across correlated industries, aren't we just setting the stage for a new 2008 housing crisis?
The white paper explicitly flags this as a systemic macroeconomic threat, but with a severe structural difference from 2008.
What's the main difference?
Well, the liquidity crisis 18 years ago was triggered by subprime mortgage defaults.
Right, risky loans.
Yeah, but what the data points to now is a prime mortgage default risk. These are individuals with impeccable credit histories who played by all the legacy rules of the economy.
They did everything right.
They did. But even prime borrowers lack the liquid savings buffer required to survive a prolonged period of zero income. Current macroeconomic models are dangerously behind here.
Because they just haven't priced in the ripple effects of simultaneous cross-industry white-collar displacement.
Exactly. It's a massive blind spot.
But, the fallout isn't just hitting the established professionals. The dynamic affecting the younger generation, the people who haven't even had the chance to sign a mortgage yet, is incredibly insidious.
It's arguably worse for them.
Yeah, the hiring rates for young adults aged 22 to 25, who were specifically trained for these highly AI-exposed roles, have already dropped by 6 to 16%.
What's fascinating here is the underlying mechanism causing that drop. This is not unemployment in the conventional sense. It is non-entry.
Non-entry. Walk me through how non-entry actually functions on the ground.
Okay, consider the traditional corporate apprenticeship model. A junior analyst or a junior developer is hired to do the foundational grunt work.
Like cleaning data sets, drafting basic code, compiling initial reports.
Right. That work actually provides negative or neutral value to the firm in the short term, but it serves as the training wheels for the junior employee to eventually become a productive senior staff member.
It's an investment in their future output.
Precisely. But AI completely obliterates that training phase. An LLM can clean the data or draft the foundational code instantly and flawlessly.
And the senior developer just reviews the output.
Exactly. The firm no longer has any financial incentive to subsidize the learning curve of a 22-year-old. Consequently, the most AI-literate generation in history is being systematically locked out of the workforce.
Wow. So the entry-level on-ramp is completely destroyed, and the mid-career professionals are being actively off-ramped.
It's a squeeze from both sides.
Yeah, if the traditional career ladder is missing its bottom rungs and climbing the existing ones just guarantees you a mountain of student debt, what is the viable lifeline for these families before their savings evaporate?
Well, EON's thesis rests on a brutal reality check regarding time and capital.
Good.
In the legacy economy, the standard transition period to reskill and land a new white-collar job takes between 12 and 18 months.
Which is a long time to go without a paycheck.
Exactly. In the current hyper-accelerated market, an 18-month gap in income is financially fatal for a household carrying prime debt.
They default.
Right. So the white paper argues that the transition window must be aggressively compressed to 90 days.
90 days.
Yes. Furthermore, the capital requirement for that transition has to implode. We have to move from a $160,000 university degree model to an infrastructure that costs under $400 a year.
And this is via their virtual campus, right?
Correct.
Well, I have to push back hard on that 90-day timeline. I mean, you cannot just hand a displaced medical records specialist a textbook and expect them to safely pivot into a skilled trade, or successfully launch a complex digital business in 3 months.
It sounds crazy, I know.
Compressing years of education into 90 days just sounds physically impossible.
If the methodology relies on passive consumption, you are entirely correct. A 90-day transition via PDFs and multiple-choice quizzes is a fantasy.
Right.
But the framework relies heavily on the cognitive science of the experiential learning pyramid. The human brain retains roughly 10% of what it reads.
10%?
Wow. Yeah. However, we retain up to 90% of what we actively experience and physically practice.
So the strategy is to completely bypass cognitive abstraction and force immediate practical application.
Precisely through immersive XR environments. The white paper leans on PwC data analyzing the efficacy of spatial learning.
And what did that data show?
Learners utilizing virtual reality environments acquire skills 4 times faster than those in traditional classroom settings.
4 times. That's incredible.
And crucially, they report a 275% increase in confidence regarding their ability to actually apply those skills in the real world.
Okay, but what about my concern regarding safety during such a rapid pivot?
That's the best part. Immersive safety training in these environments has been shown to reduce real-world workplace injuries by 43%.
Oh, because you make your catastrophic errors in a simulation, not on a live job site.
Exactly. You can fail safely.
That makes a lot of sense. The technology EON is deploying to facilitate this, specifically EON Genesis 2.0, is conceptually wild. Let's look at the mechanism of how this actually works.
It's a game changer.
Yeah, from the documentation, it basically serves as an intelligence ingestion engine. You feed it completely unstructured, static data.
Like a 500-page regulatory framework, right?
Exactly. Or a complex piece of legacy software code, or just an audio interview with a retiring expert. The AI parses the semantic and procedural logic from that raw data, auto-rigs a 3D environment, and compiles a photorealistic interactive training module.
It's fully automated.
Yeah, it moves the user through a structured loop. Show me, train me, let me try, evaluate me.
And it entirely removes the friction of curriculum development. What used to require a dedicated team of spatial computing developers working for 6 months can now be generated dynamically in minutes.
But Genesis 2.0 is also paired with EON AI, which I think addresses a critical vulnerability in the 90-day transition plan.
Oh, definitely.
Because pivoting your entire career path in 3 months isn't just a technical hurdle. It is a profound psychological trauma.
It really is. You are losing the professional identity you've built for a decade.
Right. The Brainy architecture deploys multi-avatar AI coaches to manage that specific cognitive load. You aren't just interacting with a generic text prompt.
No, it's highly specialized.
Yeah, the system provides a career counselor avatar calibrated to map your legacy skills to resilient sectors and, manage the motivational deficit.
Which is huge when you're feeling lost.
Exactly. Then it provides a domain expert avatar to execute the Socratic technical instruction. And finally, it provides a business coach avatar to guide the logistical setup of a new venture. It surrounds a learner with continuous specialized feedback.
But looking closely at how Genesis 2.0 operates, there is a hidden corporate angle here that we have to discuss.
Oh, for sure.
This technology isn't just sitting in the cloud waiting for a displaced worker to discover it. Corporations are actively using this tech right now, setting up the exact conditions for the crisis we are talking about.
Right, you're referring to enterprise knowledge capture.
Exactly.
When a corporation executes a 30 to 50% workforce reduction to chase those AI productivity gains we talked about, they inadvertently commit institutional self-sabotage.
They do. They wipe out decades of localized, undocumented operational wisdom.
So it's essentially reverse engineering an employee's value.
That's a good way to put it.
The company takes the veteran customer success manager who holds, the unwritten psychological profiles of the top 20 accounts. And before handing her a pink slip, the company uses Genesis 2.0 to extract her decision-making trees.
Her situational muscle memory, her workflow logic, all of it.
Right. They bake her expertise into a localized searchable simulation so the corporation retains her wisdom but eliminates her W-2 salary.
It is the ultimate commodification of human experience. However, the sovereign human initiative hinges on the fact that this technology is symmetrical.
Symmetrical? How so?
The displaced worker has access to the exact same extraction and codification tools.
Oh, wow. Okay.
The white paper lays out 3 distinct pathways for the individual to leverage this architecture. They transition from a victim of algorithmic displacement to an active architect of their own economic output.
Okay, if you are listening to this right now and recognizing your own role in those high-exposure statistics, the theoretical framework only matters if there are actual executable off-ramps.
Absolutely.
Let's break down the mechanics of these 3 paths. Where does a displaced worker actually go?
The first route is the employment path, heavily oriented toward highly resilient sectors.
Okay, what kind of sectors?
The primary target here is the skilled trades: electricians, plumbers, HVAC technicians. These domains exhibit near-zero AI task coverage.
Well, yeah, because artificial intelligence cannot navigate the chaotic physical reality of crawling under a foundation to reroute a burst pipe.
Exactly. It's a strictly physical domain.
But let's look at the friction there. If you take a 50-year-old former logistics manager and tell them their only survival option is to walk onto a loud, physically demanding construction site as a complete novice to beg for an apprenticeship.
It's daunting.
The psychological barrier to entry is insurmountable. Furthermore, if millions of white-collar workers suddenly flood the plumbing and electrical markets, won't that massive supply spike simply crash the wages in the trades?
The wage collapse argument ignores the underlying macroeconomic deficit. We have a historic systemic labor shortage in the trades.
Really? A historic shortage?
Yes, compounded by an outgoing wave of retiring baby boomers and massive infrastructure spending. The market can absorb a massive influx of labor.
Okay, but what about the psychological barrier of being a novice?
As for that, EON deploys their sentient world capability. That 50-year-old logistics manager puts on a headset in their living room and spends 200 hours privately wiring a photorealistic digital twin of a commercial building.
Oh, so they practice in secret.
Yes. They build legitimate, code-compliant muscle memory and spatial awareness before they ever physically step onto a job site.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because a massive percentage of displaced cognitive workers have absolutely zero desire to transition to physical labor, regardless of the virtual on-ramp.
And that brings us to path number 2.
Right. The proprietor path, utilizing EON's Venture Builder platform, the philosophy here fundamentally flips the dynamic of human capital.
It's a complete paradigm shift.
Instead of begging a new corporation for a lower salary just to compete against an AI, the worker uses AI to become a sovereign proprietor.
The core premise is that the broader market still desperately needs your 20 years of domain expertise. The only thing that has changed is the delivery mechanism.
Right. The market can no longer justify paying you a full-time executive salary with benefits, but it will gladly pay for the output of your expertise if it is modularized and priced efficiently.
And the mechanics of how they sell this are fascinating.
Yeah, the white paper details the Knowledge Bits marketplace. But we need to be clear for the listener, this isn't just an app store where you download a static PDF template.
No, these are living API-driven microservices.
Exactly. For example, the paper outlines a displaced director of human resources. She doesn't go hunting for another director role. She uses Genesis to extract her specific proprietary methodology for employee conflict resolution and performance mapping.
She builds an AI-enhanced performance review system.
Yes. She then leases that localized AI agent to 50 small businesses who can't afford a full-time HR department. She charges them a subscription, and suddenly she's generating $15,000 a month in recurring scalable revenue.
We see the exact same mechanism applied to legal services in the paper.
Oh, the paralegal example.
Right. A displaced paralegal constructs an AI-augmented contract review service. The localized LLM processes the bulk of standard vendor agreements for small and medium-sized businesses.
And the human proprietor only steps in to manually review the flagged exceptions, right?
Exactly. They deliver big law quality risk assessment at a price point that small businesses can actually absorb. The individual worker is transformed into a hyper-efficient micro-agency.
It turns human insight into a scalable software product. That's incredible. But, what if you aren't a product builder? What if your specific skill set has always been logistics, relationship management, and, complex implementation?
That brings us to the third option.
The VAR path. Becoming a value-added reseller.
The VAR path acknowledges that AI orchestration requires human trust. In this model, you license EON's overarching tech stack.
So the virtual campus architecture, the brainy AI coaches, the Genesis environment.
Yes, all of it. And you take responsibility for deploying it across entire regions or massive industrial sectors. You serve as the vital human bridge.
Look at how this operates on an international scale, too. The white paper cites Saudi Arabia's Vision 2030. Which is a massive national initiative to transition away from a purely oil-based economy.
It's a huge undertaking.
Yeah, you have to rapidly upskill hundreds of thousands of citizens for entirely new industrial outputs. A tech company sitting in California cannot just drop a massive software package into Riyadh and expect it to automatically integrate.
It requires deep orchestration. A VAR maps the specific curriculum requirements of the Ministry of Energy against the capabilities of the EON platform.
They navigate the cultural context.
They secure the local buy-in and physically manage the deployment of the immersive hardware across regional training centers.
We see the exact same requirement in European manufacturing sectors attempting to pivot to green energy standards too.
Factory operators need local human reassurance to adopt immersive retraining protocols. The VAR doesn't code the AI. They build the human infrastructure that allows the AI to function.
So we have the employment path via virtual upskilling, the proprietor path via the Knowledge Bits marketplace, and the orchestration path via the VAR model.
3 solid options.
But connecting these individual lifelines back to the macro scale, does this actually solve the structural crisis of millions losing their prime wage jobs?
To evaluate the viability at scale, we look at the World Economic Forum's projections for the end of the decade.
Okay, what do they predict?
They estimate that 92 million roles will be permanently displaced globally by algorithmic automation.
92 million. That's bleak.
However, they concurrently project the creation of 97 million new roles that require a high degree of AI literacy.
Well, on a spreadsheet, that looks like a net gain of 5 million jobs.
Yeah.
Crisis averted, right?
But those 97 million new roles are entirely theoretical if the labor pool cannot adapt.
Of course.
The core issue of the K-shaped economy is a massive structural translation problem. How do you physically and cognitively move 92 million terrified, displaced individuals into 97 million highly technical new roles?
Though with a 90-day window before prime mortgage defaults shatter the banking sector.
Exactly. EON's proposition is that they have spent the last 25 years quietly building the exact translation engine required for this bottleneck.
They've been preparing for this.
Their infrastructure already supports 136 million platform downloads. They maintain active partnerships with 4,400 institutional customers across 80 countries through their global Diploma Alliance.
And that alliance is the linchpin, isn't it? Because completing a 200-hour virtual simulation in your living room doesn't mean anything if employers reject the credential.
Exactly. Validation is key.
By partnering with accredited universities and sovereign governments to co-brand these learning modules, EON forces the market to validate the 90-day transition.
They possess the pre-existing distribution network necessary to deploy this socioeconomic intervention at a civilizational scale.
So what does this all mean for you navigating this landscape today? The core mandate of the Sovereign Human Initiative is a permanent reset of expectations.
It's the end of an era.
It really is. The era of leasing your cognitive output to a single centralized corporation in exchange for lifelong stability, health benefits, and a predictable retirement is effectively over.
The K-shaped reality is actively splitting the global workforce.
You are either going to utilize these immersive generative tools to become the architect of your own automated output, or you are going to be the victim of someone else's. EON is proposing a radical democratization of expertise.
Just a huge bet.
Yeah, betting that if you provide a displaced professional with the architecture to codify their own knowledge, they don't have to become collateral damage on a corporate balance sheet. They become a sovereign AI-augmented proprietor.
If we trace that mechanism to its logical conclusion, it presents a profound paradigm shift regarding the future of labor.
What do you mean?
Well, think about it. If the Sovereign Human Initiative reaches critical mass, if millions of us successfully transition from dependent W-2 employees to fully sovereign AI-leveraged micro-agencies constantly trading modular knowledge bits with one another in a decentralized marketplace, what happens to the concept of the traditional company entirely? If high-level expertise is fully democratized, modular, and available on demand via an AI-augmented individual, are we actually looking at the end of the corporate firm as the primary organizing structure of human civilization?
That is an incredible thought to leave on. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. Keep questioning the lines on the graph and keep exploring the change.